From the dust of forgotten scrolls and the whispers of broken tablets, a story comes, a story not of beginnings, but of an end. An end so vast, so sudden, that the world that came after could not remember its own name. We speak of an age of bronze and gold, when gods walked among mortals, and empires carved their names into the very mountains. The Hittites, masters of 1,000 gods, their chariots like storms of iron and wood. The Mycenaeans, whose citadels kissed the clouds, their mariners wrestling with the wind-dark sea. And Egypt, the eternal kingdom, a ribbon of life beside the Nile, its pharaohs draped in lapis and sunlight. For centuries, this world hummed with life. Tin from the far mountains flowed into the furnaces of Cyprus. Olive oil from Crete filled the amphorae of Ugarit. Scribes in Babylon etched laws and poems onto clay, their styluses dancing a language of wedges. It was a world bound by trade, by treaties, by the shared fear of the gods and the shared ambition of kings. The great kings called each other brother, exchanging letters sealed in clay, promising peace, trading daughters, and sending gifts of ivory and gilded thrones. It seemed eternal, a tapestry woven with threads of power and prosperity, so intricate that to pull one thread would be to unravel it all. But something began to stir in the shadows of this gilded world. On the arid plains of Anatolia, the rains failed. Year after year, the sun beat down upon cracked earth. The grain withered in the fields, and the storehouses of Hattusa, the Hittite heartland, grew quiet and empty. Famine, a spectre with hollow eyes, began to walk the land. Letters of desperation flew between kings. A plea from the Hittite queen to the pharaoh of Egypt, not for gold, but for grain. A single ship, a single hope against a rising tide of hunger. But one ship is a whisper against a hurricane. Then came the tremors. The earth itself seemed to groan in agony. In Greece, the mighty walls of Mycenae and Tiryns, built by the hands of giants, cracked and fell. Palaces that had stood for generations became tombs of fire and ash. The art of writing, the linear B script that recorded the king's sheep and jars of wine, vanished. It was as if a hand had wiped the slate clean, erasing memory itself. On the coast of the Levant, the great port of Ugarit, a crossroads of civilizations, was consumed by a conflagration so fierce it turned clay tablets to glass. In its final moments, a watcher on a tower scrawled a warning of enemy ships on the horizon. The message was never sent. Who were these enemies? The records call them the Sea Peoples, a name that is not a name, but a description of a nightmare. They came from the sea, a confederation of ghosts, a storm of displaced and hungry souls. From Sardinia, from Sicily, from the coasts of Anatolia, they came. The Shurden, with their horned helmets, the Peliset, who would give their name to Palestine, the Lucca pirates and raiders. They were not an army with a single banner, but a great migration born of chaos. They came in ships with bird-headed prows, their families and all their worldly goods aboard, searching not for plunder, but for a new home. They were the children of the climate crisis, the orphans of the earthquakes, the embodiment of the world's unraveling. They crashed against the shores of the old empires like a relentless tide. They broke the Hittite kingdom, scattering its people to the winds, its capital left to the jackals. They swept through Syria and the Levant, leaving a trail of smoking ruins. Only Egypt, ancient and indomitable, held the line. On the walls of his temple at Medinet, Habu Ramesses III carved the story of his victory. He depicts a great battle on land and sea, the pharaoh like a god, slaughtering the invaders. He saved Egypt, but he could not save the world. The trade routes were shattered. The tin and copper no longer flowed. The intricate web that had connected this world for a millennium was torn to shreds. The lights went out across the Mediterranean. The age of bronze and heroes gave way to an age of iron and shadow. Cities became small, impoverished villages. Grand palaces were replaced by crude huts. The population plummeted. Knowledge was lost. For 400 years, a dark age descended. Writing disappeared from Greece. The memory of the great kings faded into myth, their deeds transferred to gods and epic heroes. The world became smaller, more isolated, more fearful. People looked upon the colossal ruins of their ancestors and believed they were the work of Cyclopes. For how could mere mortals build such things? In the silence that followed, a new world struggled to be born. From the ashes of the sea peoples, the Philistines arose. In the hills of Canaan, a small tribe of shepherds began to worship a single, invisible god. In Greece, poets began to sing of a lost age of heroes, of a Trojan war and a long journey home. They were piecing together the fragments of a broken memory, trying to make sense of the great forgetting. They were the inheritors of a ghost, living in the shadow of a civilization whose collapse was so complete, it became the stuff of legend. We look back from our own complex world, a world connected by threads of light and data, a world of global trade and shifting climates, and we see their reflection in our own mirror. The chronicles of the Bronze Age are not just a story of the past. They are a cautionary tale, written in dust and fire. They remind us that civilizations are fragile ecosystems, that the ties that bind us are as delicate as they are strong. They teach us that when the rains fail and the earth shakes and the hungry take to the sea, the world we know can vanish in a single lifetime. And all that is left behind are ruins, and a question that echoes through the ages. How does a world end? Not with a bang, but with the slow, silent severing of every thread that holds it together.